Hello, everybody, and welcome to the New Ways podcast. My name is Shel Fuller, aka The New Ways, and today we have a very special guest for you, Jesus Martinez. I have known Jesus for years, from way back in the day in Miami, which is where we both basically grew up, and also New York, and just now we're both in Europe, and he lives in Barcelona. I'm in Berlin, and he is probably one of the people I respect most among my friends when it comes to music. He started off as the artist Zenon back in the day and had 4 albums, and then he went over to Desire Lines and was the founder of that band that went on for like 7 or 8 years with some really great music. And now he is working under the moniker of Future Films. And he's also talking about a new project, a new collaboration that he's doing with a amazing vocalist. And he does a lot of collaborations. He works with all different, not just other musicians, but he really allows himself to be inspired by dance and video and film and all sorts of things. So it's a lot of fun to talk with him and to talk with him about some technical topics also, like remastering and things of that sort. So instead of me continuing to ramble on here, I will take you to my interview with Jesus Martinez, aka Future Films.
Hello there.
Oh, okay. There you are. I thought I was like, oh my God. I was like, I don't think the microphone's working. Oh, I think there's like a delay.
Yeah, there was a little pop-up that I had to accept because of it was just a pop-up letting me know it's being recorded. I didn't really see it. So.
Okay. You just see the recording. So good. So how are you doing?
Doing all right. Yeah, just having a nice afternoon so far.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually, geeking out right now on some mastering compression. So you caught me at a good moment. I mean, I had it on my calendar, but always geeking out on stuff.
I think that's always something that's fun to do, like to go through. Like I've been playing also with like different plugins, and then I just like keep hearing the same thing over and over. I'm like, does that sound better? Then I hit a point where I'm like, I don't know if I need to maybe like do something different, because then I can't hear the differences anymore. And I'm like, okay, maybe I need a break.
Breaks are very good, is what I learned over the past years. Taking a step away from the song or just the music for more than a day is also quite good, I find, to retune your ears,
Yeah, I find also there's like a moment when I'm working on something and then I think, you know what, I just need to go away from 2 days, and then you come back to it and it's like, then you hear all the things that you didn't hear the first time,
Yeah, exactly. That's the beauty of stepping away from it, and sometimes just like not listening to anything of your own, like that you don't have any emotional attachment to. Like listen to other people's music, or just take a break from music in general. I don't know. At least I do that. That's my way of retuning my ears.
Yeah.
Usually a day is good, but 2 days, like a weekend or something like that, is also really nice.
How often do you go back and listen to like your old catalog, or do you not ever do that?
Trying to think of the last time I listened to old catalog. I don't do it that often. I think that I don't listen to it as often as maybe, I don't know, an engineer would, or a mix engineer would, or something like that. Because if I'm writing, producing, performing, like doing everything, by the time I'm done with a song, I usually need some space.
Yeah.
And then you add performing it live, which is sometimes not the same arrangement, but has a lot of elements, or 90% of those elements that make up a song. I just need space from it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't listen to them that often. I think the last time I listened to the back catalog from Future Films was maybe like 3 months ago, and that's because I'm moving everything over from one distributor to another now that I've switched my label and everything. So it's kind of like I was just technically listening to it just to make sure that files are still correct or whatever, but not because I wanted to, like, get back into those versions of the song, I guess I could say.
Um, okay, so when you do go back and listen to your old
Mhm.
catalog, it's funny. I maybe do it once a year. Not everything, but I listen to maybe some songs and I have like an hour where I just like skip through different songs. And it's funny because sometimes I'll listen through and I'm like, oh, this song's pretty good. And then other times I'll listen through and I'm like, eh. I just it's like I always have this love-hate relationship with the old stuff. I like it, but then I guess it depends on the day. I'm not sure. How do you feel like when you go back and listen to like your older stuff?
Oh man, it can be. I mean, I'm usually very happy, because if I wasn't happy with it, I wouldn't have released it, right?
Yeah.
But considering like some of the newer, or the my palette, or the tools that I'm working with, um, I sometimes I hear like, oh, well, I could have maybe EQ'd this part a little bit differently. There's always something that I would want
Yeah.
to, like, touch, but then I tell myself, why? It's great the way it is. It's how you felt at that moment. And I think that music, when you release music, you put it out into the world, and that's how it is in that moment, You, of course, that's not you past that moment. That was just that moment, or how you were feeling, let's say, around that time. But I don't think, unless you're remastering, which I was considering remastering something that is not feature films from a previous band from Desire Lines. I was like thinking about remastering one of the EPs, just because I was reconnecting with that music, and I thought about giving it some new life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an EP that sounds great, but was released in 2007.
Oh,
And so
okay.
I thought, wow, we've had leaps and bounds with mastering right
Yeah.
now. And doesn't mean that you have to use it, but I think in the case of something released, that long ago, it could really it could really boost it. And I think it would be great, because when I mastered that, I think this goes, for most artists who've been releasing for the last 20 years, when things that were mastered more than 15 years ago, we weren't thinking about streaming, we weren't thinking about Spotify,
Yeah.
and the kind of compression that they're going to put on your song, which is going to squash it. So when you
Yeah.
take that into consideration, you master differently, maybe not necessarily mix, which I maybe it could be, but not in my case. But for mastering, yeah, it would be different.
Yeah, it's sometimes funny to listen to the songs afterwards on different platforms to see which platform is better. I did realize recently that Tidal is actually rather good in terms
It
of
is.
the sound quality. And I was really sort of surprised when I went back and compared it to other like platforms. It's not that the other ones are horrible, but some of them you're like, oh, that song now it has too much bass, or another one you're like, oh, is it really supposed to be so many highs? Like I don't remember that. I think it's a little bit like it like
Yeah.
destroys things. It's like it's a little bit annoying. Um, if you're gonna decide to remaster something, what makes you decide that you think, okay, this is something that should be remastered, and what would be sort of the purpose for you behind doing that?
Well, specifically with Desire Lines, um, the last album that we did together, which was it's a band,
Hmm.
so it's me and Vanessa and Ian. and Lewis was 11 years ago, I think.
Oh my God.
So we were thinking about maybe recording something new or doing, maybe just recording something new, not necessarily committing to like playing it out and touring it or anything, but that made me think, oh, you know what, it would be great to, it got me thinking about like, oh, cool, I would like to go back and listen to the EP and the album and see
Yeah.
if they need remastering. Both could be nice to remaster. We also didn't get to release on vinyl back then. We really wanted to, but
Okay.
there wasn't. We were just focused on CD and the early days of streaming.
Yeah.
And so this time around, for a limited amount of fans that asked for vinyl, we thought, wow, let's finally do it. But again, it was primarily because of this. It wasn't like I was going through all my my catalog of different projects and going, oh, this one could use mastering or not. It was basically because I was thinking about that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Um, you do sort of a lot of performances. I mean, you've been a part of so many different music projects and had so many different sounds and experiment a lot with sound. Um, what do you feel like when you do a song in the studio and then you have to translate that over into a live performance? Um, so what's your process in terms of reinterpreting the song, or how do you move it from A to B in terms of um how do you take something that may be more electronic based and move it over to be able to be performed live?
good question. It depends on the project and also what the setup is going to be for the performance. For example, if we're going to be, a duo or a four-piece band or whatnot. I mean, right now, I'm working on my new project, ATOMATA, which I told you about.
Hmm.
Right now, we're in the process of doing exactly that, like figuring out how we're going to perform these songs live in a trio.
Okay.
And most the EP, which is coming out in January, but our first single, Sleepwalker, comes out um, in a month or so.
Okay.
We are breaking the song down to then build it up again. That's how I work when it comes to live. Like, for example, if it's all produced in the studio
Hmm.
and the live elements, like the performances by a human, in this case, our voice, which is Kenia, the synthesizers that I play, but I'm also programming a lot. There was a lot of field recordings, some old tape loops that I actually transferred to digital to then use. There were a lot of interesting elements, and it's been a project where I've been like mixing up the analog and the digital,
Okay.
even though it's all coming, it's all been created and mixed inside of a DAW. But what I'm doing now is dissecting it and going, okay, this synth part I'm going to play because I enjoy playing it a lot,
Yeah.
And so I start to like separate what it is that I'm going to leave in the sequence, and what would be like a playback.
Hmm.
And then the other parts that I would be playing. And this is because we're a trio, meaning it's me with synths and beats and a little bit of bass and whatnot, and then Kenya on vocals. And we have a violinist. There's a lot of violin with Automata, so the violinist is doing a lot of sounds with that. And that's pretty much how we're going to do it live. I can see in the future adding a percussionist.
Okay.
That would be amazing for these first performances. We're testing things out. We also have a visuals person that's incorporated into the band. And
Okay.
so the four of us are just experimenting on like how we take performance further, not limiting ourselves to, okay, this is the song structure as it was recorded. But
Hmm.
when we perform them live, sometimes we extend the part. We're experimenting right now. And what I'm finding is that also working with somebody who's going to be focused on the visuals, being part of the band makes a difference because we start to think of like, oh wow, we can extend this section of the song to be able to go with a little bit more of what this part of the film is doing and things like that. And I think it's really cool. I've never done this before. Usually it's like we dissect what the album is or the songs or whatever we're doing live. We kind of come up with a set list. Okay, these are the songs we're going to do. Maybe not in this order every night, but this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And then we work on those arrangements. Then those arrangements are ready. And then the visuals come into play, like meaning the person who's doing our visuals or taking elements from things we've done, creating those videos and everything else that is put together afterwards. But right now we're actually doing it all at the same time, which is cool.
Okay. I mean, I want to get back I want to get back to the visuals part in a second, but I have sort of a two-part question, and it's if have you had songs that when you moved it from studio version to the live version that you found were really successful, or that you felt okay, that transfer is really good, and what was good about it, and also sort of vice versa. Do you have songs where either the transition from studio to live version wasn't really satisfactory for you, or you found it difficult, or maybe you weren't able to move it over to like to live in a way where you said, oh, this song just isn't able to be performed live?
That's happened in the past. Trying to think of, like, right now I'm like thinking of so many songs that I think at one point I felt that's what I wanted to say. I have had that happen, and I have felt like that in the very beginning, like this song doesn't work live in and how I want it to work.
Yeah.
And sound. And then it just requires tweaking, like just tweaking it for the space. For example, some basses just need to be tweaked to be a little bit beefier, because you're playing, the you want that sub bass and that vibration,
Yeah, exactly.
And same thing with some of the highs, as you mentioned before, like highs, every room is tuned differently, or every venue is just different. And so I think about that as well. But when a song just doesn't feel right, I don't force it. Like, I mean, I also, when it's a solo gig, that's one thing. But when I'm working with musicians and we're doing this, together, I really want everybody to feel the song. So if it feels like a chore to play a certain part, or it's not working, then let's work on a different arrangement. And sometimes the beauty of that is how you end up with a remix, like by doing, at least in my case, there've been times when we've like remixed the song to perform it. And then we end up loving the remixed version, and we tweak it along the way. For example, if we are performing a new version, an alternate version, we tweak it. If we're on tour, we just tweak it along the way. It's like, hey, tonight let's maybe pump up the bass a little bit, or there's always like notes that I take, and then I tell the front of house engineer, specifics on this particular song during certain times and things like that. These things really do make a difference. Like just the volume alone on how, the audience is going to feel it. And on stage, it's for our monitoring, it also makes a difference. So all these things together really have to gel. And that's the beauty of live performance. It's never the same 2 nights in a row.
Yeah, I mean, that would be sort of boring just to come in and be like, okay, so we're gonna have 10 shows and we're gonna do everything exactly the same, We're gonna play it safe, do everything exactly the same, then it's like a mess. But do you have songs that you say, okay, that song is actually, I mean, you just mentioned you had some songs where you had to remix them to really get them to pop on stage. So do you have a song like in mind that you sort of said, oh, this song is really live, is either a lot better, or it's just really, really well done when we do it live?
I mean, off the top of my head, it's all the stuff I'm working on right now. So, for example, with ATOMATA, we have a song called Buried It Down in the Garden, which is a very processed song.
Okay.
Vocals are processed. It's taking Kenia's soprano voice and just annihilating it.
Okay.
But like in like the coolest way, with her blessing, of course. We did it together. We produced everything together, and kind of and now that we want to perform it live, we're figuring out how that's going to happen in real time. And
Yeah.
so the same effects and plugins that we're using in the DAW, and I work mostly with Logic, although I do use Ableton for some things, but this was all created in Logic. We're experimenting now, seeing how that's going to sound. And there are some delays that just happen. So we're kind of working with like what it's an instrument at this point. It's not a plugin anymore. It's not an effect. It's an instrument for her voice. And so we're playing with that. And it is a song that in the beginning I was like, oh, it's not sounding cool. It's not like I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
To now it's got a life of its own. And we're not planning, and it's not like we're going, okay, we got to do the song exactly like how it is on the EP or how it was recorded. And this is a good example of that. Like, it sounds like the song and it has the identity, and we perform it just the way that we're performing it. We performed it for the recording, but the way that the sound is in the room is different. And I think it's even more powerful.
Okay.
So this would be an example of how like taking something that might not automatically translate to live can take on a new life. And in this case, we're even adding in some violin that's not on the recording, which we're processing. And so that processed violin with the vocals and these effects all are creating this like new layer. And again, it turns out like it sounds like we're doing a live remix of it.
Okay. But it sounds really cool.
It is cool and it's fun, and I've never been the kind of musician that's like, we got to stick to it, to the song X like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I respect when when I have had the opportunities and been invited to play in friends and other bands, projects and producers who've asked me to play. I respect however they want to portray it live.
Yeah.
And so if it's fully rehearsed, then there's, there's other things to take into consideration. Like, if you're in a band and you're backing a singer who's got dancers or performers of other types, of course, we cannot go off of like what's already been rehearsed. It's all on it's all timed, the lights and the whole thing. So of course we stick to that. But I come from the school of like messing around with things in more the experimental context, and although I'm not a jazz musician, I do like the occasional like spontaneous jam when it doesn't give the musicians a heart attack. So, because for some people that's like the scariest thing ever. It's like, what do you mean we're gonna go into a 1 minute jam at this part of the song with a room full of people listening? I'm like, yes, why not?
Yeah, and they're like, wait a minute, because those improvisational skills is something I think that people just always have to practice, and they either they forget, or they don't do it enough that they feel comfortable with just doing something on the spot. But so do you have a lot of pushback when you're like, hey, we're gonna do a 90-second jam here right in the middle? Is it usually sort of like, oh no, he's back with this shit again, or what? Or how do people react to that?
You know what? No, not really. I would say it's been a while. It's been a long time since I played with the last band that I played in that we did that was Desire Lines.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in Desire Lines, I was the guy that was like, oh guys, I don't know about this. Because I was playing with really brilliant musicians, and I even remember like Vanessa, who tended to not want to have too many open moments of improvisation, especially on stage.
Yeah.
Got into it, and then it was like, out of the four of us, like the three of them were like, no, let's do it. And I'm like, all right, okay. Now it's the coin has flipped. I was the one that was bringing this up, and now and now you guys want to do it. And so we would always just decide, like, does it make sense in the flow of the track, of the set list and things like that. With ATOMATA, we haven't gotten there yet. Also because we're not playing with a drummer. We're mostly electronic with the live instruments on top. It's a little bit different, I think, in a context of of a more, I don't want to say traditional band, but like when you've got, drums, bass, guitar, and vocals and synths and whatever else, you don't have to stick to a click track. If you're not playing with any sequences, then you have a lot of freedom. And even if you are playing with sequences, you can stop it and start it again. But I guess I just come from that background of like, yeah, the computer plays with us. We are not playing with the computer.
Yeah. Okay. How long does it take for you to if you finish a project and you want to perform it live? How long is the process to move it from studio to live version? Like in general, I know it's not the same for each project, but based on your experience, how long does it usually take for you to get a finished live show completed?
It can be, well, depending on, I don't know, it just depends on the project. But I'm just thinking of feature films and now ATOMATA. With feature films, I remember for some of the gigs, I think it took like maybe 3 weeks of rehearsals. But that's because those songs had been written with live in mind, because I'm just like that. I think about performing them before I'm even done with recording them.
That's something I never do. I have never, ever created any song. And right now, if I were to go through any of my songs right now and someone said, okay, you're going to do a live show, I would probably call you because I would be like, I have no clue where to even begin with this.
Yeah. It's yeah, I know lots of musicians who have said exactly what you did, like that they don't think about that. I just happen to think about it because I look forward to actually performing them live. There are songs there are some projects I've never performed live. But I would say the majority of the projects that at least I've started or have been the main songwriter for, we have performed live. And with ATOMATA, for example, we have we have dates. We've got some like dates right now that we have to.
Oh, really?
Like not live dates with an audience, but we are doing, for example, we're recording there are 4 songs in the EP, and 2 of the songs we're recording in an abandoned space here in Barcelona, part of a collaboration that we're doing with a director and actually a contemporary dancer. And so it's a performance that we're doing for live streaming, and we're documenting it, of course, it's being filmed. And so these 2 songs we are like really prioritizing because we've got like 6 weeks to be ready, and it will be fine. But it's having those dates also is pushing us a little bit because we're like, okay, these 2 songs we gotta have like nailed down in the way that we want it to sound for this particular performance.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 songs we're also doing something very similar, but it doesn't include a contemporary dancer. And so it's more with the visual artist. So cues are different. Again, if when you bring in additional performers, it's all about the cues. Yeah. And so that was our main concern for this first one. Okay, we want to have that down so that the dancer is able to know exactly what's happening, so they move with it, and that's the agreement that we've had with this one particular contemporary dancer that we've been wanting to collaborate with. So yeah, again, it really depends on what you're going to do with it, but on average, I think within a month, I've had a full set nailed.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we're going to go to a short break, but when I come back, I want to go back to the topic of not only visualizations, but also working with sort of artists with other disciplines like dancers and stuff like that, and talk a little bit about your collaborations, because you collaborate a lot. So, but first we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll continue on from there.
Introducing Karen, the Bold New EP from the New Waves. This EP dives deep into the cultural phenomenon of the Karen stereotype, transforming social commentary into a rich, rhythmic experience. With his keen awareness of societal trends, The New Ways takes you on a sonic journey that's as thought-provoking as it is immersive. Each track isn't just music, it's a conversation reflecting the pulse of our times and challenging perspectives. Engage with Karen, an EP that resonates on a profound level, inviting you to dance, reflect, and question. Now streaming on all major platforms.
And we're back.
And we're back. Exactly.
That was my radio voice. And
that's your radio voice ready for Miami radio.
You're listening to WVUM.
Oh my God.
Remember them?
Do they even exist still?
Yes, they do. And I'll tell you something. I listen to them still now, currently, here in Barcelona, using the Radio Garden app, which I love because then I can tune into all kinds of radio stations around the world. And they're one of my favorites. WVUM, I'm like plugging them because I still discover so much music listening to this particular radio station from, I think it's University of Miami.
Yeah, University of Miami. I remember I was literally, I think last week, telling someone and explaining someone the song Detachable Penis.
Yes.
Yeah, and I heard it on WVUM, of course, the first time because I was like, and I was explaining it to someone about the college radio thing because college radio isn't really such a thing in Europe, and I was really like explaining to them like about it, and they're like, "What's the song about?" And they were just like, the university was playing it. They were just like totally confused by the whole situation. That this song was being played like on this university radio station, and that this university radio station existed at all, just the concept of it.
Yeah, I'm all for college radio. I think it's just thinking about like how I discovered so much music growing up and back when I was living in Miami when we first met. That was a time when I listened to not only WVUM, but I listened to like so many other stations. Another one that pops into my mind right now is KCRW from Santa Monica. That was a very influential one in like the early 2000s. Morning becomes eclectic. I discovered so much music there.
I know that my ex, he used to listen to Soma radio because they have like this chill, they have this chill sort of station that he likes all this down tempo stuff. So that was always cool to like discover like sort of just like different things. You let it play and just something pops out at some point. You're like, oh, what's that? I wonder who does that? And you're looking at the list and yeah, this is I find that I don't really have so much time for doing like the exploration into like new music and new artists, and I think that's something that I need to start finding time to do.
I do, but it kind of comes in waves. Like, this is a year where I have been listening to a lot of music and loving it, and having conversations about the discovery has also been a big one this year. Talking to other musicians, engineers, and also journalists, bloggers, of how I'm always curious how people are discovering music. Yeah, because I used to love the hunt back in the day. Yeah, like, before streaming, I used to love getting in my car. Even like going back to Miami days, I used to get in the car and drive all the way from Miami to like Fort Lauderdale. Can't even say it today. Or I know what's wrong with me. Fort Lauderdale. I would drive up there just to go to a record store and get a limited edition like LP that I couldn't get in like any of the ones in Miami. I specifically went there. I remember now. I specifically went to Fort Lauderdale to get Portishead's first CD, but the Japanese version because it had an extra song and I really wanted it. Like that was my favorite. I loved The Hunt. That was like back in the day when that was the same thing. Like when Bjork was coming out, when she first, like the first 3 albums, it was just like there were so many different versions and it was like, oh, okay, I have to get this. I have to get this version from this country because it has this. And do you know that? And
It's also that like recently I was talking to someone about, the whole hidden track thing, which of course you can't do anymore with streaming. But like
Um,
it was always interesting when you hit the last track and you realize that the last track says it's like 20 minutes long and you're like, oh, there's a hidden track in here somewhere. I don't know. Somehow I like the hidden track sort of era, like the discovery. Like it's not listed anywhere, but it's somewhere within this next 20 minutes of the song, you know?
so Kenny and I were just talking about the hidden track. Like, funny enough, you mentioned this because we recorded a song that is we don't know what to do with it. It's an amazing song, but we were like, does it work with the EP? Does it work with, because we also have another EP that we're finalizing now, and I was like, will it work with the other EP, the second EP? And then I'm like, what if it's just a hidden track? And she's like, yeah, but there is no such thing as hidden tracks anymore. And
Exactly.
I'm like, so what? So what if we tack it onto the last track and it's just 25 minutes or whatever it says? It's there. And I don't even know how you do that. Like I would have to ask like a friend from a label or a distributor, like,
Yeah.
how do you even do that? You
I
can't.
think you would have to look to see because distributors they also have time limits for certain songs. So
Yep.
I think you would just have to see what would be the maximum time limit for a particular song and then sort of see how you could place it in there. I'm sure that some streaming services might be annoyed because then it's going to be playing that's like, however long, 15 minutes of time gone where the listener could be listening to other music, but still, as long as you're within the rules, then they can't really say much.
Also, like when you think about if it's two songs in one, that's no longer a single song in technicality there, right?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
they would block it because it's two different ISRC numbers or whatever it is, the
Yeah,
track IDs.
exactly. Um,
Even having to talk about this now is annoying sometimes. Like the fact that like we have to think about these kind of things. And when I'm working with musicians and I'm maybe helping them produce their music or producing it or whatever, and I get these questions, I'm like like the father figure going, don't think about that. Focus on writing the songs. Let's focus on the music. Don't think about so much of the technicality. But in a way, you kind of have to, because right now it's like, oh, cool, we want to make two songs into one. Well, are they really two songs?
exact. Well, like I had an issue because you're moving your stuff to the same distributors I am, and that you told me about. I'm not going to mention the
Mhm.
name because I was having a little issue with them because of the like the elements of the songs I have in my last release that where it's just talking, and they won't release it. I had to go back to my old distributor for certain albums because anything that's not like that's not just instrumental or normal with normal singing and it's just like spoken they won't release. They say they can't release it, which is I think is crazy because my old distributor can. So there's a few like four albums of mine, actually all of my, not all of them, I would say three of my like almost full sort of EPs or albums are still with my old distributor because the other one won't distribute them.
I've never heard
I have
this.
never heard the same. When I got the message from them, I I read it and I was just literally I was just like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I wrote them and actually told them exactly that. I'm like, this I've never heard of anything so stupid. I said, so are you suggesting that I need to change my entire artistic vision for a project or my style because I incorporate that into the whole concept of the album? Um, I
And
just found it really strange. I'd never heard of anything like that, and I think it's the most ridiculous. I just never heard of anything like that.
that just sounds so bizarre. Like, so I'm just thinking, like, is it because of some sort of legality or some licensing thing where it's like, oh, this falls into being a podcast?
No, they told me basically that the agreements that they have with I guess the streaming services won't allow them to do it. But then I think, but then why can't I release the exact same album without any problems with other distributors, but not with you? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even make any sense that I don't find it makes sense for any streaming service to put that sort of restriction on anyone because of course that means it limits the ability, the amount of product, or the amount of inventory they have on their platform to be able for listeners to enjoy. So I don't really get it.
Yeah, I'm curious. Keep me posted. I'm really curious, like
Yeah,
why
so
that would be. And just a quick question on this: is it because like your song that is spoken word has it's just spoken. There's no
no,
bed of music.
no, there's music underscoring it.
Oh, this is even weirder then.
Yeah, it's like because I'm like there's music underscoring the whole thing. So what I don't get it, but yeah, that's they said they can't do it, but I don't know. I'll keep you posted on that whole
Yeah.
development. But I was very annoyed because I have most of my stuff moved over, but I've moved everything. I moved all the tracks or the projects over that I could, and yeah, and the other ones I just leave with the old one. But I really sort of was looking forward to having it all in one place.
I,
Yeah,
I hear you. I hear you on that. I'm doing that myself now, like moving each of the projects and bands in like the last like all this, the music I've created in the last 20 years to one. And
yeah,
that was my goal, just so I can minimize all of the management of it.
yeah.
And it's kind of like a cumbersome task actually, because it should be
It's a
easy and they
pain
always say
in the ass. Yeah,
it is a pain in the ass, and all of them say, "Oh, it's easy, and this and that." And like when you're an independent artist that is doing everything yourself,
yeah.
which you can these days, and it's wonderful. But at the same time, these technical things sometimes are
Mm,
the ones that take up so much time, and you can't even just pick up the phone and talk to somebody. You gotta it's like you gotta write your complaint or whatever, and then they open a ticket, and then it takes some
yeah.
days, and then they reply. So it's a bummer,
Yeah,
but
because
thanks for sharing that.
moving it over, the whole process, like it took really, I mean, I did it so piece by piece, but it took each time I needed to move something over, the more tracks you have, then you have to make sure you're copying over the ISRC numbers so right, and then you want to move this over, and then the new distributor has other questions for you that weren't on the other, and it's just it's a process. I mean, I'm happy that I moved the stuff over that I did move over, but yeah, but like I said, I'll keep you up to date. But I wanted to get back to sort of the collaboration stuff, especially when it comes to visuals, because you mentioned that you're working with a visual artist. So how do you start a collaboration with a visual artist? Like, how do you bring that when you come to the table for the first time? What are you looking for? Why? What sort of what are your expectations in terms of the added value to the live performance?
Well, the way that I'm working right now is so each one of the songs. I mean, I have created visuals for the songs myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I really wanted to kind of detach myself from like doing everything,
Yeah.
at the moment. And so I was looking for like someone who had experience with doing what would be called DJing,
Yeah.
but more, And so then I started looking around, asking friends, some musical collaborators who've actually worked with AV artists as well. And I met with a couple of them, and I was like, "Here's the concept, here's the music, here's some of the visuals, some
Mm-hmm.
ideas of what like the cover is going to be, and things like that, and then kind of just let them propose something." I
Yeah.
wanted to really leave it up to the artist to put their energy into it and their taste, let's say. And
Yeah.
so that's where we're at now. It's still in the very experimental point.
Yeah.
I think that it will evolve, and that it won't be a set amount, a set look or style that we will just use for every performance. I think it will evolve, but I think the way that I'm approaching it, I know the way that I'm approaching it is one that takes more time. In other cases, it's been like here's the set list, here's the vision that we have, and we like what you've done here, here, here.
Yeah.
This is why we're contacting you. Let's talk about how we can collaborate, and we'd love to see maybe ideas that you have, or they present to us, or whatever. So it can always start in so many different ways, but that's how I've approached it. Mm-hmm.
Well, I know that you've also worked with you collaborate a lot with a lot of different people, and you've worked, put together bands. When you're putting together, or when you're looking for collaborators, what is it that makes someone a good collaborator? Or when you finally decide to work with someone, how do you determine, okay, this collaboration works and it's successful for you?
Good question. There are people that we just gel.
Mm-hmm.
For example, musicians that I've worked with that I know we have a really good rapport, not just like in musical rapport, to say,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of phrase it that way.
Yeah.
For example, like there are two people that I always think of first when it's like, okay, I want to put together a live show for XYZ. If I need a helping hand, like for example, I reach out often to my friend and collaborator Fabian Kalker. He's in Berlin, and Fabian is great because he does. He is a producer and also composer for theater and for performance.
Okay.
But he also is musical director for several hip hop and electronic artists in Europe, throughout Switzerland and Germany. And he puts together their live shows and is a musical director for their tours. So he gets it. He understands like the nuances of working in what it takes to put together the live show from an album. And so I reach out to him like for advice sometimes on this. And we have done some things together, which has been great. For example, right now I'd love to have him in ATOMATA, but he's really busy and hadn't planned for it. So he's not going to be in this version, but I'm sure in the future we might collaborate again, and I know that we would love to do it. And then there are other people that I just know, like based on working with them in the past. If it's someone new that I've never worked with before, you just got to try it,
Yeah.
I think that during rehearsals and the whole process, you kind of get a feel for if somebody is, vibing with you, or you're understanding each other. You're able to communicate on a level where you understand the challenges that are ahead with creating this live experience.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Talk me through sort of, because you have been around and doing music for a long time. I mean, since we know each other for a very long time, and I won't say how long because I'm still 27. I'm definitely still 27 years old. So,
27 forever.
27 forever, man, until the end. So talk me through sort of your evolution. So I know, so back in the day, you started off with Xenon. I think that was the first one. Or was there one before that I don't know about?
Xenon, so when we met, I was in like this experimental post-punk band, I guess you could say it is, that kind of genre in Miami. But that didn't really, that was only for like less than a year.
Okay.
And then when I moved to New York, Xenon was the first, it was basically my project. I was alone in that, and then I brought in all the collaborators, and that was like, we had, Xenon had, essentially we had 3 records.
Okay.
We did 3 records over a span of 7 years. Okay. So that was, yeah. And then after that, I was in Desire Lines. I created Desire Lines while I was in Xenon, and Desire Lines was just something that happened as like a side project that then became the main project.
Okay.
Because I was just playing around and I created these demos that were a very different sound to Xenon. I mean, it was I was going for more of a shoegazy, noisy sound.
Okay.
And that's where Desire Lines came from, like a shoegazy, noisy, just washy sound that I really enjoyed producing, but it wasn't appropriate for what we were doing in Xenon. It just didn't really work
Yeah.
with what we had. And so then Desire Lines, like I mentioned before, like I was thinking, oh, I really want to perform these live because they're going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
And so I did an EP, put a band together. But it was more like a collective because we had different members. Some shows it was like a different guitarist or a different drummer because one couldn't make it, and so it kind of became a collective, and that's how it stayed for another 7, 8 years. Yeah.
Okay.
So those are the two main projects. I've had a lot of side projects that I don't even. That's a long list, but those are the main ones. And then Future Films came from. Future Films started in New York. Even before I moved to Berlin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Future Films goes way back. It's just that I didn't release anything for a long time.
Okay.
It was another studio project, and I still collaborate. Some of the collaborators in Future Films have also collaborated with Desire Lines and Xenon over the years. But yeah, Future Films started as like a little side project, and then when I moved to Berlin, I developed it. That one was always an audiovisual project. So I was collaborating with directors. And so we whenever I would finish a song or a body of work, I would immediately go to like a director that I wanted to work with and do a collaboration. I'm like, oh, I've got a script or an idea.
Yeah.
And with Future Films, still to this day, I always had this like vision of it encompassing a contemporary dance academy in it or something. Like I really wanted to work with dancers. So that's why each music video, we've done films and music videos with dancers. Because the topic of movement, and it's always been with a human body. Not that we won't maybe at some point work with machines or something else, but it's been what has kind of been at the core, a core piece of Future Films.
Yeah.
And then that's it. I mean, I've had other projects too, but those are the main ones.
Okay. And your new project,
ATOMATA.
Exactly. So how did that come about?
That was very organic. Kenia and I know each other since right before the pandemic. And so I met her here in Barcelona through mutual contact. And over the last year, we have been really gelling on music. Overall, like we always gelled on like aesthetics, and we like a lot of similar music. She's really into experimental techno. Also, she's a soprano who likes to experiment with her voice. Very like Diamanda Galas, like Yoko Ono. Not exactly like their styles, but she pushes the boundary of what a voice does. And she belongs to communities here in Barcelona. Like there's a lab here where it's all for that, like body expression and body sounds, and they like pound their chests and hit their legs and make sounds. And I love this. I really wanted to try something different. And that's how it all started. I was like, I've got a song that I'm working on, and I think that maybe you might like it. And then she sang on that. Then I had another song, and I just kind of like kept sharing songs with her.
Okay, that sounds good.
And here we are. You know, we're full blown project band or whatever you want to call it, and we're definitely excited to work on more music.
Okay. I have one more question, and then I want to talk about sort of what's coming up next. You have lived in so many different places. Does that have a dramatic sort of influence on the music that you create, like where you happen to be, like physically in the world?
Yes, I mean, yes and no. I think that every place I go to, it influences me. for sure. That is something I really enjoy about traveling and immersing myself in different cultures. Yeah, I made myself plural.
I'm more
That's
people.
because I'm in the multiverse.
I was gonna say it's multiverse of multiple personalities. It's one of the two. It's one
Yeah,
of the two.
exactly. Probably both. No, but like being here in Barcelona has definitely influenced me with this whole theme of performance, and it's just because here I have been participating myself. It's something that I've done to just experiment with my body. Is I have gone to movement classes.
Okay.
I have been joining KENIAA for the last year and a half at vocal groups where we jump around and make sounds like crazy people. And it's been so much fun. In the beginning, I was like, what am I doing here? But
I can imagine.
But I gotta it's therapeutic, and it was really cool to meet other musicians, performers that were there as well, who you have no idea what they do outside of this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it all started as like I went one time on a Saturday, and I remember like Kenya was trying to explain it to me. She's like, it's not necessarily a singing group. And I'm like, okay, so what are we doing? And she's like, just come. And I'm like, all right.
You know what?
And
Anytime someone just says, just come, I'm like, oh shit, here we go.
Yeah, exactly. Like back in Berlin, it was like, just come to the party.
Just come. It's like, oh God, here we go. Yeah.
Get lost in this world.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's one way that the city has influenced me is by opening up that door, like, you know, one that I've allowed myself to be part of.
Yeah.
And I think Berlin for me was important for like geeking out on sound. I think Berlin for me was like synthesis.
Yeah.
And not just because of techno or anything like that, but the musicians and the DJs and producers that I collaborated with there, the directors, all the performers, like there was this very like, what's the word? They would go into projects very, I don't want to say brutal, but very like raw. Like in Berlin, it was always like so raw. Like it was like, let's do this video together. Great. And we would just do something magical from like nothing. And I loved that. It was like, fine, if we don't have this space, we'll make the space. If we don't have this camera, we'll use this camera. And I really like this sort of like thinking, these ethos of like, yeah, creating something from nothing. I thought that Berlin was really amazing for that.
Yeah.
And then before living in, you know, many other cities, I think that like every city has soul.
Yeah.
And you tap into that, you know, when you're creating there. I don't move around as much as I used to.
Yeah.
But like, for example, I was just 3 months ago in the Canary Islands. I go to this island called La Palma, which has 220 dormant volcanoes, one that was active a year and a half ago. And I go there because I have a friend who's got a house, and when he's not there, I go and stay at that house, and it's really beautiful. And I wrote songs there. And the songs that I wrote while I was there have such a earthy, meditative vibe, that something that came out of me, a little bit haunting as well. And it's like, again, the space does contribute. So I totally am a believer in like, you can go to some studios that are going to definitely influence your music.
Yeah.
And maybe nowadays, you know, the home studio is your laptop.
Yeah.
Then go with your laptop and your mic and your little mixer somewhere else, sit in the forest or go to a hotel room or do something. You're going to find that the music is going to be different.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. So before we wrap up, so what are your upcoming projects? What new releases? What can the people look forward to?
Well, the next release is the debut single from ATOMATA, which is Sleepwalker, and I think that's on December 10th, if I'm not mistaken. And
you said December, is it December 10th? You wrote it to me. I have to take a look, but I think I think you're right, December 10th.
I think it is December 10th. I don't have like my notes in front of me, and like I don't have my MacBook here. But Yeah, I think it's December 10th. And then the EP will be out in mid-January. I don't want to give you a wrong date, but the URL is automata.io, ATOMATA.io.
Okay, then I will make sure that I add that in the description, sort of in the thing, so that people can take a click on it. And yeah, so thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. As always, it's always a pleasure, and I'm always excited to see what new things you're coming out with, because every time I know when you're working on a new project or new something, I know it's going to be really yeah, I just know it's going to be something really interesting and new. So that's always really wonderful. So I appreciate you taking the
Thank
time
you.
to talk with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the show. And yeah, it's always fun to have these conversations with you, to geek out a little bit, and looking forward to more new ways. Looking forward to the next singles and everything. So keep me posted on that.